May the 7th, 2002. Packed and ready for our cruise on narrowboat Ursula and our trip to Turkey. We flew Continental Airlines, leaving Reno at 12:25 and arrived at Gatwick at 9:55 the following morning. Billie and Ray travelled at roughly the same time, but they flew on American Airlines. Len picked the four of us up at Gatwick Airport and drove us to 16 Norheads Lane, Biggin Hill. Here's a shot of Olive and Len's new garden. It sure is nice. Here's Ray having a little sippers in the conservatory. And then she makes a quick trip up to the local shop to buy some sweets. These are Bob the Builder sweets. Next stop was the High Street, Safeways, to get some groceries. She quickly gets used to those British pounds and pennies. Thursday, May the 9th. We caught the train from East Croydon to Holmes Chapel, changing at Watford Junction and Crewe. All aboard! That's a big case for a little girl. Oh, Mr. Porter, what should I do? They sent me on to Birmingham and I wanted to go to Crewe. Okay, I can't sing in tune. Why don't you have a go, Pat?
Oh, Mr. Porter, what shall I do? I wanted to go to Birmingham, but they sent me on to Crewe. Take me back to London as quickly as you can. Oh, Mr. Porter, what a silly girl I am.
Graham was waiting for us at Holmes Chapel Station when we arrived, and then drove us to his home in Gawsworth. That's his wife, Lynn. Graham has tricked Ray into pumping up the Lilo for their bed. According to Lynn, it was about a mile down the lane and across the fields to the pub. Watch out for those wild English animals, Ray. Lynn's English mile was about the same as an American 2.5 mile. Even so, it was a nice walk across the fields and along the Macclesfield Canal to the Fool's Nook. Ray is eager to try out her first English pub. Is that a pixie sitting on the mushroom? It's Friday, May the 10th, and we're just about ready to set off for Anderton and narrowboat Ursula. Graham's car was rather crowded with the 5 of us, all our luggage, plus some groceries that the girls had just picked up. We arrived at Anderton about noon and didn't have too much trouble finding Ursula. However, she wasn't ready for us until about 3 o'clock, so we went and checked out the newly restored Anderton boat lift. The lift was originally opened in 1875, but corrosion to the main structure forced its closure in 1983. The restoration work was started a few years ago, and the lift was opened about 2 weeks before we arrived. Jill and Jakob arrived right on schedule around 2 o'clock after travelling on British Airways to Manchester Airport and then getting a £20 taxi ride to Anderton Marina. In the hopes that Jill wouldn't be late, I'd gone ahead and bought 6 tickets for a ride up the lift in the trip boat. I believe Ray is telling the passengers all about the history of the Anderton boat lift and what we should expect on our journey from the River Weaver to the Trent Mersey Canal. And now it's Jill and Jakob's turn. It was a neat experience to be some of the first passengers to travel on the lift after being out of commission for 19 years. This shot is taken through the window in the roof, looking up at the top of the lift. Here we are nearing the top, and once they lift the guillotine gate, we'll be entering the aqueduct and going on to the Trent Mersey Canal. One last shot from inside the trip boat. However, Pat and I will be returning next week because I've gone ahead and booked a passage for narrowboat Ursula. After our adventure on the boat lift, we boarded narrowboat Ursula, got everything unpacked, and was underway round about 4 o'clock. These neighbours popped by to say goodbye. After a short 1-hour cruise, we moored up for the night at Marston, and then visited one of my favourite pubs, the Salt Barge. Although you wouldn't think so from Billie's face, the lamb Henry was excellent. It always is at the Salt Barge. This lad can really hold his beer. Looks like Jill and Jakob are having a tough time trying to keep those eyes open. We did run into my old pals Mark and John, and once again Mark said that he'd be dropping off some marmalade for us in the morning. Saturday, May the 11th. As promised, Mark tapped on the roof around 6:45 with 3 jars of marmalade and 1 jar of strawberry jam. He wouldn't accept anything for them. And here's Jakob having his first narrowboat bath. We pulled away from our mooring about 7:30. Here's Ray getting some instructions on how to steer a narrowboat. She soon got the hang of it and quickly became an expert. While Ray's doing all the work at the tiller, Jill and Jakob are taking it easy on the front deck. Here's a shot of a disused working boat that has been scuttled in Billing's green flash. These flashes are caused by subsidence resulting from the salt mining that took place. Notice the bank on the left side of the boat and how Billie has the tiller. Ray's telling her, "Mum, you've got it the wrong way." It looks as though Ray has her mum and Ursula straightened out, and everything seems to be under control now. Jill gets her first exposure to canal locks as she works the gates of Middlewich Big Lock. We arrived at Middlewich around noon and popped into town to do a bit of shopping. Ray finds a pillar box to send a card off to her dad. Jakob gets a good view as we prepare to come out of Middlewich Top Lock. Just after making the turn onto the Middlewich branch of the Shropshire Union Canal, Ray sees us into Wardle Lock. The lady who lives in Wardle Lock Cottage came out to meet the family. As always, it was a bright sunny day on the canals. This green stuff tastes really good. Ray gets ready to take us out of Wardle Lock. Monday, May the 13th. I babysat Jakob and the others went into Nantwich to do a bit of shopping. As you can see, we had a little liquid sunshine today, and it started to pour down as the day wore on. We left Nantwich about noon, headed back to Hurlston Junction, and started cruising up the Llangollen Canal. This is the Wrenbury Church lift bridge. By the way, girls, don't let it go, because Mum's coming through. This is the Wrenbury Road lift bridge. You need a BW key to hydraulically lift the road up. As the sign says, this is Queasley Lock. One more to go and we'll be at our overnight mooring, the Wiley Moor pub. And here we are. I had a nice piece of cod and chips, after having a couple of pints, that is. Tuesday, May the 14th. We skipped breakfast today and headed towards Grinley Brook. Here's Ray sitting on the lock gate at the bottom lock. Take note, Ray has been promoted to captain. See her hat? This shot was taken in the second lock of the staircase. It was a few minutes after this that Bob and Annette were walking down and said, "Hey, there's Pat!" It was blowing a gale as I winded at the top of Grinley Brook. I got good and truly stuck and needed lots of help to get free. Here is Captain Ray making sure that everything is alright as we descend the staircase. Hi Billie, how you doing? After we got through the bottom lock, we said hello to the crew of Narrowboat Plymouth. That's Neil, Annette, Dina and Bob. We'll be cruising with them for the next few days. After we said our hellos, we headed on down to the Wiley Moor pub for a welcome pint and then some lunch. Annette and Dina opened Wrenbury Lift Bridge for us on our return journey. Here's Ursula starting to descend the 4 Hurlston locks. There's Narrowboat Plymouth waiting in the pound until Ursula descends the second lock. After a long day's cruise, we moored up for the night opposite the old Barbridge Inn around 9 o'clock, and then slipped in for a quick pint. Wednesday, May the 15th. Both boats were up and away by 7:30, heading down the Shropshire Union towards Chester. This is the 2-lock Bunbury staircase. We left both boats in the bottom lock for about half an hour while everybody paid a visit to the local canal shop. Here's Ray outside the shop trying to get some water from the old pump. Don't think she's having any luck. There was virtually no traffic on the Shropshire, so we breasted up the 2 boats and travelled together for 3 or 4 hours. That was fun, and as you can see, Ray really enjoyed it. Ray's been promoted to Admiral because she's now the captain of 2 boats. She would watch me take the tiller of Ursula, and when I pushed it to one side, she would do exactly the same on Plymouth. Here she is explaining to Bob where we are and where we'll be going. As we enter Chester, it looks as though we have a new captain. We're now starting our descent of the 3-lock Northgate staircase. Both boats are ready to enter the second lock. One thing that makes Northgate staircase interesting is that parts of them are just honed out of solid rock. And they are quite deep. Mum takes it easy in the bottom lock while the girls do all the work. We moored up at Tower Wharf around 5 o'clock, and as you can see, I had a much deserved wee droppy. The group went for a short walk around part of the city wall in the evening. This is the Victorian clock that sits on top of the wall in the centre of town. We had dinner in a restaurant-type pub that was close to the River Dee. The meals were mediocre at best. And here's a tired little girl getting a piggyback home. Thursday, May the 16th. A hot sunny day visiting Chester. Here I am starting off by getting my log up to date. After breakfast we had a stroll around the city wall. At one point you have a nice view of the Chester racecourse. I think Jakob's saying, "Where's my ice cream?" Billie and Gillian wanted to put one of these in their luggage and take it home. Jakob checks out the family hostile Albion. We'll eat there tomorrow night when the kids have left. This is a school outing, and the Roman centurion is asking the boys and girls questions about Roman times. The 3 with their hands on their heads got their answers wrong. Alongside the wall is a park area that contains some Roman ruins. And these are some of the statues of famous Roman goddesses. After we finished our walk around the wall, the girls went off on a shopping spree, and Bob and I sat in the Queen's Head and had a couple of pints. Bye-bye Chester and Narrowboat Ursula. Hello London. Billie and Ray and Jill and Jakob left us today and caught a train for London. Friday, May the 17th. Pat and I decided to do the 17-mile round-trip cruise up to the museum at Ellesmere Port. This is a homeless family that we met on the way. The museum was very interesting. Lots of restored boats and all sorts of canal history. It was well worth the journey up there. The Ilkeston is a good example of a restored working boat. Now that's the kind of boatman's cabin that I want on my boat. Pat's obviously got the hang of how to use the alum. The living quarters on this working boat are a little less spacious, but it was somewhere for the bargee and his family to sleep. They have plenty of work on their hands, with a number of boats still waiting to be restored. As you can see from this shot of the large boat basin, the museum isn't just dedicated to narrowboats. This Shropshire mileage marker tells us that the canal is 66.5 miles long, starting at Ellesmere Port and ending at Alderley Junction. You can lock down from the Shropshire to the Manchester Ship Canal. That's the shot here. However, you do need to have a special boat certification and confirm that you have adequate third-party insurance. We decided to give it a pass. After we returned from Ellesmere Port, we met up with Bob and Annette and Neil and Dina and walked down to the Albion and had a very nice dinner. Saturday, May the 18th. Narrowboats Plymouth and Ursula start making their way back up the Shropshire. Notice Bob ducking underneath the fisherman's pole? Bob had electrical problems with Plymouth and I had a bilge pump go out on Ursula. Bob made arrangements for Black Prince to meet him at Charlie Harden's, and while there I had them put in a new bilge pump. While all this maintenance and repair activity was going on, we paid a visit to Mrs. Harden's canal shop. Just a little place, but jam-packed with all sorts of stuff. Here's Pat with Mrs. Harden and 2 dogs. After leaving Charlie Harden's, we cruised down to Calverley and moored up for the night. We had some very nice meals in the Davenport Arms. Sunday, May the 19th. Cruised down to Barbridge Junction and had a lunchtime pint at the Jolly Tar. On returning, Bob found that Plymouth still had electrical problems. However, I'd taken off and had to go all the way down to Hurlston before I could turn around and get back to meet him. After Plymouth was up and running, we cruised down to Nantwich, had supper on board, had a short walk around the outskirts of Nantwich, and then turned in for an early night. Monday, May the 20th. Underway by 5:45. As we passed narrowboat Plymouth, we tapped on the roof to say goodbye. It was a rainy day's cruising as we made our way to Middlewich, where we picked up a few groceries. We moored up at Bramble Cuttings, that's just beyond Croxton Flash, around 2:30 and decided to call it a day. Our welcoming party was there to greet us. Looks like a nice boat. Maybe they'll invite us in. Don't be scared. I'll go first. Hey, that's far enough. Tuesday, May the 21st. We spent the morning giving Ursula a bit of spit and polish, and then had a nice slow afternoon cruise down to the salt barge at Marston, where we had our usual lamb Henry and a few pints with our local pals Mark and John. Wednesday, May the 22nd. Once again there was a 6 a.m. tap on the roof, and there was Mark with a jar of lemon curd, rhubarb and strawberry jam, and a bottle of sloe gin. We had a nice sunny morning cruise up to Anderton and arrived around 8 o'clock. Shortly thereafter, Judith and Robert turned up to join us for 2 days cruising on the River Weaver. We hadn't seen Judith for quite a few years, and this was the first time we were to meet her new partner, Robert. Just north of the lift, the embankment had become unstable, resulting in a stoppage on the Trent Mersey until June, July, or even later. We were scheduled for a 9:30 journey down on the lift, but only one Cassian was working, so they rescheduled us for 10:15. This boat has just come up the lift, and once he clears the staging area, we'll start our journey down. I took quite a few shots, and you're forewarned, I didn't want to get rid of any of them. Here we are crossing the aqueduct. Once they lift the guillotine gate, we'll enter the Cassian. Now we're in the Cassian, and we'll be tying off before starting our descent. As you can tell, I'm really enjoying this. It's a unique experience to take your own boat down the Anderton boat lift, and I'm really looking forward to it. It looks like Kingfisher's enjoying it, as well as Pat. This is a shot looking down on the River Weaver, which we'll be cruising for the next couple of days. We're now making our slow descent down. The journey itself takes about 15 minutes. It's photo op time for Judith and Pat, and also for both of us. We're about halfway down at this point. I like this shot. You can see the superstructure of the lift in the mushroom. I think Pat's asking me if I'm ready because we're nearly down. And here we are. The guillotine gate has been lifted, and all we have to do now is cruise out onto the River Weaver. This is looking back at the lift from the river. One last shot of the structure. That is, until we come back up. There was very little traffic on the river. Saw no commercial boats, 2 or 3 narrow boats, and this is a sunken Weaver flatboat. There are 2 locks on the river. This one is Hunt's Lock and the other is Vale Royal. They are both operated by lockkeepers. Winsford Bottom Plash is the end of the navigable waters of the river. We stuck our nose out, but it was blowing a gale, so made a hasty retreat to Winsford. We had a pint in the Red Lion, but it was not a very nice pub. We cleared the 6-foot 8-inch high Newbridge swing bridge with an inch or 2 to spare. We'll have more about this bridge tomorrow. We moored up for the night at the beginning of Vale Royal Cut, a nice wooded area. We found out later it was a favourite spot for drug dealers. Thursday, May the 23rd. I was up fairly early and took a walk to Vale Royal Lock through the woods. It was about 1.5 miles. While I was on the walk, I took this shot of a River Weaver navigation marker. When I got back to the boat, I suggested to the others that they do a similar walk after breakfast.
Shortly after the others left on their walk, I heard a cry for help and some loud screaming coming from the bridge. A young man shouted that a lady was in the river and he couldn't get her out. The others heard the commotion and came rushing back to the boat thinking that I'd injured myself. The lady was in trouble and turning blue, but she refused to be helped. She just clung to the bridge wall shouting, "No, no, no!" It was obvious that she was in an unstable state. The paramedics arrived 15 minutes later, and then a number of police cars, a fire engine, and an ambulance showed up. It took the rescue team about 20 minutes to finally convince her to accept some help and get out. We found out later that she was 61 years old, had breast cancer, and wanted to end it all. It was fortunate that that young man was walking across the bridge and noticed her in the river.
The young man and myself tried to convince her to get out of the river, but she just kept screaming and hollering back at us. Fortunately, a car came by that had a cell phone, and they called the paramedics. As I mentioned in the recap, they arrived about 15 minutes later. I've no idea how long she was in the river before the young man spotted her.
And I can tell you that river water was cold, so she was definitely in a state of hypothermia. After about 15 or 20 minutes, the paramedics finally got her to grab hold of the lifeline and they managed to get her ashore. Here's a shot of all the emergency vehicles that turned up.
After all that activity, we started heading back to Anderton. We stopped off in Northwich and walked around the old town, then slipped into one of the pubs and had a pint before continuing on our way. And here we are, back at the lift. I really won't go through another series of photographs for the upward journey. Judith and Robert left us after we'd moored up at the top of Anderton Lift, and then in the evening we got the boat ready for turnover. Friday, May the 24th. We took Ursula down to Anderton Marina for the pump out and diesel and gas, and then moored her up for turnover. Graham and Lynn picked us up about 12:30.